Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. We're so glad to see all of you here today. Would you join me for a moment of prayer? Creator and provider, we are grateful for the hands that prepared this food you set before us, for the hearts who are interested in our beloved church's future. Thank you for bringing us all together. In Jesus' name, we pray.
So I will be your facilitator today. We are going to be, this session is going to be sharing with you each of 4 different ideas that are around the room. We'll do it one at a time, and then you'll be able to ask your questions and give your feedback. I invite us all to, if you've come into this room with anxiety, release it and be gentled by a conversation. Your session is eager to hear your thoughts. They are eager to respond to them as best as they can. And then there will also be, who's the one who has the good handwriting? Sally will take any questions that we can answer so that we can do so at a later time. Thank you, everybody, for being online. It's good to see you all. Hey there, Bill. Hey there, Kristen and Jim, and I guess the rest of it is us at this point. So who's going to handle the first presentation? Actually, you are, right?
No, you're just saying what they are. I'm just bringing things up.
That was great.
Okay.
So we also have, if anybody wants things to write on, we have index cards. We also have the forms from, and we can put them back here on this table. We have the forms from our last meeting that give you place to write about each of the options if you want to jot something down. This is our first, we're just calling it the tangerine option. We're not using first or anything like that. So this is the tangerine option. This is converting the Institute building to workforce housing. This is the option that the Leap of Faith team worked on so hard for probably about a year. And the presentation that you were sent out, the newsletter that Carol wrote about how they got to this is with 43 North. This would mean that the Institute building, particularly the 3rd and 4th floor, would be converted into workforce housing. So that is above subsidized housing by 1 level. There are several grants that come with workforce housing. And 43 North is a place that has done this. They are an architectural firm, and you can learn more about that by reading the poster and talking to Leap of Faith members.
So what are our questions? What are our comments as it has to do with this idea of converting the Institute building to housing?
Yeah, I've been struggling with this for quite a while, and I have read all the newsletter information, but I had asked, I think, a couple of times of various people to provide the actual what's the word? The actual proposal. That is the written proposal that had the numbers in it, and I have not received that. And my question is broader than me. I really would like to know why that was not provided quite at the beginning. I've been a little bit knowledgeable about what's going on at Gates and their housing, and they're providing all the information involving the congregation from the beginning. And while I appreciate what's been written in the newsletter, I feel that well, for me, that was wholly insufficient to make it.
Yeah, what we want to do in this is, and we're hearing emotion, and that's understandable. But let's see if we can just stay more to our questions. So there's a good question here about why wasn't this information up front? Is there somebody who would like to respond to that?
Partly because we just haven't gotten to the point where we were able to share it. I actually intended to send it to you this week and was not able to. We are hoping to make it available to folks. It is a large file, so we don't really want to send it out just through eConnect. And not everyone, of course, is probably going to want the numbers, but if you do want it, let me know and I'll send it out to you. I have your email address so I can send it to you. Okay. Okay.
So Grania said she will take your listing. Are we going beyond? Okay, we'll go here first.
As a member of the Leap of Faith, our report was not targeted to the congregation at this point. All of our reports were primarily to the session for consideration. And so I as a member, I didn't think that we were at that point as a member of that team to be distributing that as the team, if I want to use that language.
So are you saying that until if the session had full out rejected it, it just wouldn't have been something to move forward
I
with?
just thought that was another step to take it to the congregation.
Okay.
The session wanted to share it. I think, but the session has seen it. We had almost a whole session meeting where Joel Barrett and two others from 43 North did a presentation for us. They had a PowerPoint presentation, and I think at this point we do want to share it with the people who want to see it. Absolutely, because it does give a lot more information. It gives a lot more in-depth information. So we just haven't gotten there yet, and I apologize for that. I have a lot of other things that I am taking care of, but I will send it to anybody who wants it this afternoon.
It is a big file, but John, can't you send out a link so that you don't have to send it? Because it's many megabytes. You don't want it in your inbox.
I can get it.
There have been a few times where we've tried to send it out and the person can't receive it because it's such a large file. So part of the thing has been, how do we get this out and distributed when we're unable to even share it amongst ourselves?
I'm bothered by this proposal in that it never really acknowledges the fact that there is no room for Spiritus Christi if we go this way, because we'll have to take some of the space they're now using for offices, for our offices. That destroys the unity of their operation. The other thing is that it also eliminates one of the major missions that our church has had ever since the churches were merged, and that is the support of the nonprofits in the community. And we're saying that housing for a group is more important than the service to the nonprofits in the community, as well as the support of Spiritus. And I don't know where the Quakers would fit in. That's a small enough group that, you know, they would probably be able to use some of the office space that was eliminated if Spiritus went. But as I look at this, that's a major shift that I haven't seen really discussed anywhere.
Coming in for a response. Okay, you guys share that, and then I will share with my people.
Thank you. That's a great point. And I think that's part of the reason we haven't sent everything out. That's been a big point of conversation at least the session meetings I've been present at this year. I joined session at the beginning of the calendar year, is all of those big questions. If we move forward with this, how does it impact every other mission that we have? And I think that's the big part of the reason why we're here today. And we were here, I wasn't, but you all were here on June 7th to have these conversations, because that is a huge consideration. If we move forward with the 43 North, how does that impact Spiritus and all of the other great organizations that share the building?
Thank you for that feedback. Mary, and then Sally.
Yes, I appreciate your saying that, David, but I also want to talk about what I see as the big plus of this proposal, or also the other one that's also about selling the Institute building, and that is giving us a church that's of a size that we can manage it more easily, that it will cost us less, that it will free us up to do mission, and that we would still be the downtown church in the downtown location. So I just wanted to emphasize that as one of the positives, and what you're talking about is one of the negatives of this possibility.
Thank you.
And one of the things we talked about, I've spoken with Eileen, is that, yes, indeed, if we converted this to housing, it's a possibility that Spiritus would leave. If they left, many of the organizations that are here now would be able to be accommodated in our other buildings, in the sanctuary building, which also includes the classrooms behind it, and the Allen Street building, which is, the addition done in the 70s on the other side of the sanctuary, that has, I believe, 3 floors, and has several different spaces there. So there's a possibility that we would be able to, retain several of the organizations, especially the smaller ones that are here that have smaller office spaces, if we were to go that direction. It would indeed probably mean that Spiritus would want to find another location, because we would now be reduced of space.
So Dave, I share your concern, because the immediate hit to our bottom line if Spiritus were to go away, and with this development proposal, there would be no room for Hochstein and all our other nonprofits. The immediate impact would be adding a need for $300,000 to come out of the endowment annually. So yeah, it's a big thing to make this leap of faith.
We have over here, Carol.
$300,000 out of our budget annually, that's to start with for the feasibility study, and it doesn't come out all at once, and it doesn't come out every year.
No, what I'm saying is if our tenants go away, the rental income of $300,000 a year, that's Hochstein, Spiritus, and all the other little tenants, that's an immediate loss that we would have to make up with from the endowment. And then we would have to wait until the rental income started coming in from the apartments. It's going to take at least a year just to do the construction.
Is this in response to it, or shall we? I believe Don would.
I'm responding.
Are you responding? Okay.
The other part of it we can't ignore is the handout that I provided about finance. That right now, if we don't do anything, there's $183,000 coming out of our budget every year out of the forever, unless we do something different. So no matter how we handle this, whether we get rid of the building or don't, there's money coming out of our budget. The question is how do we go into the future and have something sustainable? And like Carol was saying, the 43 North or that proposal says, oh yeah, we'll temporarily have a setback on income, but the idea is to not have the 183,000 and maybe the 100,000 that they claim that they may get in income, that we would now have 300,000 or whatever back in our budget in 5 years. So it isn't that clean just to say things got lost.
But what we're looking at is with the income coming in from the apartments, they are projecting that we will then rent Celebration Hall as event space. But these are all projections that they're imagining that, you know, with turning these 2 floors into apartments and then having event space, that we're going to get all this income. Those are questions. Those are not certainties.
So you can hear the discussion that's been had, yes? You know, that it's not a straightforward process. It's a lot of complexity to it. And some of what we need to wrap our minds around is where are we today financially? What's going on? What has precipitated the need to do something? And this is one of the things that's in the mix. So part of what one would say is this idea something I would support? And then the next thing to ask is does it seem feasible? And it took several months of really dense meetings for session to even get their minds around what this would be. But if there's a tremendous desire for any of these different options, then we go deeper, right? Then we figure out what it means. Then we figure out whether it is feasible. Then we figure out whether it is the way to go forward. Ed, I saw your hand, and then I see Marie.
Thank you. You know,
Oh, sorry, Jim. We'll get you next,
Sure,
okay?
no problem. Thank you.
what goes through my mind before I could get excited about disposing of even a part of our building, or even if we engaged with Spiritus, is that we're not clear about what we want to create for our own future. And in my mind, that is the starting point for any of the options. So I wondered if there has been any discussion of the possibilities. What are the possibilities? One possibility, obviously, is to continue what we're doing. And as I mentioned in my little piece I sent out to everybody, Gene Wolfarth was always keen on reminding me that we'll run out of members before we run out of money. And that's clearly the case. Unless we have some rather different program, and we haven't programmed ourselves beyond what we have at Forum and at some attempts at Sunday school, which are very traditional, and there are a lot of churches doing that. So my question really is, where do we want to go as a congregation? And I sort of laid out some of my thoughts, but without really developing them very much.
Thank you. I'm going to have, we're going to parking lot that concept for a second, just in case Jim wants to say something about the leap of faith. Jim, is that what you wanted to speak to?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, and then we'll go to Marie, and then we'll pull it out of the parking lot.
Okay. I think a lot of the questions that you're raising, Dave and others about, what if, what happens, we're on the path of trying to find that out. And what we would do is, if the session decides, okay, let's go forward with this concept and learn more, we're using a project management tool that has what we call gates. And the way that you can sort of think about it is if you're driving from Rochester to Boston, you don't get on the thruway and then you have no exits, no way of getting off until you get to Boston. What we're doing and what we would do is we would have little exits or gates that would be pre-programmed, that would be certain questions that we would ask. And if we don't like the answer that we get, if we decide, no, that isn't in alignment with downtown church and what we want to do in our mission, we get off at that particular point. We spent relatively little money, a lot of energy talking about it, but we would get off at that point. So if if we do decide, okay, let's investigate this more, let's answer some of those questions, let's do some projections as to revenues lost, revenues gained over time, that would really be part of the project management plan. So it's not, yes, we are going to, and go all the way to the end, but we would have these little exit ramps, these gates that we would use to help make a better decision.
Thank you, Jim. Marie?
Yeah, I have just some practical questions about this. First, we are owning the building. We are not selling the building. Is that correct? So that's my one question. The second question would be, will we be responsible for ongoing maintenance of the building? Do we have to have insurance to cover people that are in the building? I mean, do they need renters insurance? So these are just some kind of practical questions that I just like to know. I'm sure you've thought about it, but we don't know. I don't know what the question would be. The answers would be.
Thank you, Marie. Who would like to respond to that?
Yeah, we have thought about these things. There's a possibility. We've talked about creating an LLC. So it would be slightly a separate entity from downtown church that would then be the managers of the property. 43 North does a lot of management and hires people to help manage their apartments, the ones that they have already built. And they do have several projects that they've either done or that they're in the process of working on. So there would be a way to separate it to a degree, but and then the income would come to the LLC, but the LLC would be in some way connected to the church. So that would be a part of it. I'm sure, I would suspect that 43 North expects all of their renters to have renters insurance, et cetera, et cetera. They would also likely provide a property manager so that someone from our congregation would not have to be a property manager. They would have a property manager who could show apartments, be maintenance, that sort of thing. So if our maintenance staff that we retained for the other buildings would be for the other buildings, they would not be for this building, is my understanding. There was something else I was going to say.
We would be on the board. of that.
We and members of the church would be on the board of that LLC. What I wanted to say to Ed's point about doing church differently, I kind of feel like we had a whole sermon this morning about what we have here and a way and ways to reach into the community. This fall, we are the site, one of the sites for Fringe Festival. There's going to be several acts that are going to be here for those 2 weeks. We did the Pride at the Zoo event, and I think we could do other things. There are those of us that remember C2, and that was what kind of a different worship service that was. So, I'm excited about whatever we do to think about how we reach the community and how we reach out to our community and be more engaged in the community and invite the community in. Carol's poster that she did for the last gathering had all of the things that are happening. There's a state park going in. The inner loop project is going to cut down, the inner loop ramp. There's new apartments over here. There's new apartments that are going to start coming in right next to that. We have Buckingham Properties that's been here for a little while. So this area of the city, it's going to have a lot of attention on it in the next several years. And people, I think, are going to want to be here because of that. And I think we have a message. I think it's true. There are not churches that are reaching out, and we need to be a louder voice for those people who feel like the church hates them. So whatever we do, I want to be a part of that reaching out. And I think we've had a lot of things where we've been more focused internally, and I would like to focus some more external, like the Pride at the Zoo and the Pride Parade, those sorts of things that really show who we are and that we are a justice church.
Jason?
Ed, you bring up a great comment, and I saw people nodding their heads along with it, because it seems like there's two big questions that the congregation has been grappling with for years, certainly since COVID. But today, the main focus is on kind of the buildings and what do we do with the buildings, or how do we interact with the buildings. But the other question, which, from your perspective, and perhaps rightly so, is what does the congregation look like in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years? Where are we going as a congregation? How do we live out our just cause statement? How do we continue to engage in the broader community? So you bring up an excellent point, which is it's hard to decide on the building question if we haven't decided that other question of what are we doing bigger picture? Where do we want to go? I noticed Sally brought over, it's on the floor there, but the yellow session did we each wrote a potential 5-year, dream or a vision for what we see the church being in 5 years. And then AI, and Jim, I don't know if it was Jim or AI, miraculously pulled it together and found some trends in the session members' 5-year plan. So that's a conversation that I'm sure has been going on for many years in session. I can say the last few months has been a lot focused on the building. So we've started to talk about some of those, but not as much as you're wanting to hear. So it's definitely something to continue talking about.
Mary?
Well, I just wanted to say, in terms of this focus on the building and which is the chicken and which is the egg, and what do you do first? One of the reasons for thinking about this option, for instance, is that it's an option that we anticipate will free up church members' energies to make the decisions that you're talking about. Because right now we are still taking care of the building, and all that goes along with it takes a lot of energy on the part, and we're getting to be a smaller and smaller group of people to have that energy. So my feeling is let's talk about what to do with our buildings and our relationship with them, and then I think we will be in a better place to talk about our mission and what else we might want to do in addition to what we're already doing. If so.
I'm going to make sure that that voices around the room get heard. So I will give some seconds. But did you have your hand raised?
I'm glad to hear that Fringe Festival is going to have some time here at the church. That will be great. And I think we've done a great job getting nonprofits into the building in the Institute already. What is the total interest level? Is it high, medium, low, of having the upper 2 floors with nonprofits or office space? And would that accommodate the 300,000 loss that you're talking about?
Is there somebody
That's
ready
what
to
they are
speak?
now. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there's actually like a poster that gives you room by room who's where. Okay. So the top floor 4 is where Hochstein teaches their lessons. Okay. And then the third floor, we have some theater groups and the choruses, their office space. But if you look at those lists, there's a number of empty rooms, right? And Don Fairman did an excellent analysis of how much it costs to operate the building and how much income we're getting from our rentals. And it does not, it's not.
Doesn't break
Yeah,
even.
it doesn't. Yeah. So that is the consideration. If we did, yes. And we've actually we've made progress. Eileen has been a great director of operations. She has brought all kinds, she just,
she's always reaching out and looking. She was one of the people, she was the one who actually called Rochester Gay Men's Chorus and asked them if they would ever be interested in coming back to the building. And they said yes. But if she hadn't reached out to them, they might not be here. And they are in the suite on the third floor that used to be where Janie Spar would stay. So they were a big get. There's a lovely office suite on the fourth floor that's not yet rented, but we've talked to a lot of different people. We've talked to a lot of different groups. We have it out there. We have a realtor. So
2 minutes.
we're working on it.
Okay.
Probably not for covering our budget. Because we do have lower rents, because we've always had lower rents, because we've always wanted to be there for people who are, or groups that are trying to just start out.
I see Jason, and then I'm going to ask David as a question, and then we move on to the next. We only have a certain amount of time for each of these options, so.
And someone correct me if I'm wrong, but 43 North did a good job of explaining to the session that there's a humongous amount of available commercial real estate downtown, and something like 50% of downtown buildings are unoccupied. So half the office space downtown is empty, waiting for organizations, nonprofit or for-profit. There's a huge glut of available space out there, which is a big reason why it's hard to fill them with commercial or nonprofits coming in. There's just lots of space for them. What the city as a whole lacks and the country as a whole lacks is housing. So that was one of the thoughts behind this. So it's I know that Eileen and others have been trying to bring groups in. There's not enough groups for the amount of space that there is in the city.
Okay, and our last question comment for this part.
And the question is more of a comment. Speaking to what Jim said, that there will be gates that would allow us to back out. But the biggest gate is from the beginning. If you go the 43 North, that means Spiritus and Hochstein leave. You can't really get them back. So the planning, but as soon as you build, they'd be gone, right?
Hochstein might possibly be able to move
To
over
Allen Street, yeah.
because we also have the Sunday school rooms that Spiritus does use, but only on Sunday morning. So there's quite a few rooms there so Hochstein may or may not move. Spiritus may decide that they are going to move, but it wouldn't be right away. One of the first things is to do an appraisal. And then, and that's a good thing for us to do anyway, no matter what, is to start with an appraisal, do a feasibility study. What's the feasibility? And he said, you do a feasibility study, maybe they find something, then I say, we really can't do this. And you stop, and then that's not an option anymore, and something else comes in. So there's several different things. There's about maybe 4 or 5 steps that they are talking about before anything would actually start as far as building. And some of them are definitely things that it would be helpful for us to do no matter what we do.
And the corollary to that is that if you choose the Spiritus, sell to Spiritus and rent from Spiritus option, would you also have gates that could allow you to back out of that?
I'd just like to add to that question of gates, that there are organizations like the New York State Council of Churches that will do the kind of analysis that 43 North wants us to pay them for. Okay. And also Providence Housing Development Corporation, which is an affiliate of the Catholic Diocese, has not yet toured the building and made any kind of, potential offer. So there's still some organizations that it would be important for us to be in touch with.
We are right at the end of this time. Okay, so we'll have these two be the last comments, yes? Okay.
I was just going to answer, David. They even though they have a proposal on the table, they have to have architects lay it out, and all of that stuff is what that front end does, and says, is it feasible? They think it is from their experience, but they actually have to get plans that says, can we actually put units and stuff in here? That is going to take about a year. So nothing changes, and that's part of Jim's phases and gates. We don't know for sure we have a project yet. They think they do. And part of that is to get the rest of the data that says, yes, this is a due. We can answer all the financial questions and all that. And then we make a decision whether we would start moving people out and all that stuff.
Okay, and Carol.
We were led to the housing idea by a nonprofit person, Elaine Spall, former city council member and longtime director of the Center for Youth. And she said that this is a large multi-use building that no one organization can take over. And when asked what the community needed, she immediately mentioned housing and the workforce housing. All of these things around us, there's a multitude of affordable housing. And workforce housing is for the lower middle class. They can't afford a house, but they have too much money to get into affordable housing, which is government regulated, subsidized, and so forth. That's the other thing I wanted to tell you about housing. Oh, the awakening of our neighborhood, which is so important with all of this going on around us. I made a whole list of different missions we could partake that bring them in. And one of the ways we get to work with people out in the community is to make a volunteer board here. So you do some of these missions. One is for education. It's a summer reading program. They're partnering with one of the churches, New Bethel, on Scioto Street, and our own arts and lecture series. But we have a board, a volunteer board made up of people from the community, as well as people from our church, maybe Third Presbyterian Church, and find out their suggestions, bring them in, and then make some of these missions work.
Okay, so that's a big brain load of information. And it's important for us to just get more and more information so that you can figure in your own heart which one of these makes sense. You know that there's something that needs to be solved. This is one of the opportunities that's being posed to you. Let's take a look at another one.
So this one is a little more simple. It would involve selling the Institute building on the open market. So we would say, this is the Institute building, and put it out with a realtor and see who might be interested in the 4 floors. And you can see here some of the information. And some of Don's financials are here, again, that he talked about earlier, about how much it costs our church to maintain and run and take care of this building and all the people who are in it. Oh, sorry.
Questions? Okey doke.
Before we could sell this building, there's a very practical problem we've got. And that is the utility supplies are all totally interconnected between the buildings. And we're not even sure, for example, we've got 2 electrical meters. They're located in different parts of the facility, but we're really not sure what electrically is connected to which one. And so just separating the utilities and things like that would be a major task before you could put it on the market. Because you couldn't put it on the market as a connected building to something else.
I can address, I want to make 2 points about that.
Thank you.
Okay. The second point I'm going to ask Jim to address because Jim has a list. He gave me a list from the Leap of Faith team of all the different places we tried to give the building away to, who said no. Okay. So put it on the market. Yeah. But we haven't been able to give away the building. Okay. So this building, there's a lot of vacancy as people are saying in the city of Rochester. But the other piece of it is I had a conversation with Providence Housing Development, and they said, if you sell your campus piecemeal, it's a problem. It makes the whole thing less attractive if you then want to sell some other pieces of it. So just wanted to add that. So Jim, can you talk to what you think about putting it on the market?
Yeah, we tried to give it away, and that's when Elaine Small said, the building is your blessing and your curse. It's a fabulous, well-maintained, big structure, and it's well taken care of, but it's too big for one organization. So we had a number of different groups that went through from University of Rochester Strong Center, Strong Medical Center. We've had Trillium Health that goes through it, that have gone through it. Just a number of different groups. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think Carol could give that to you. But going back to Dave's question, yes, it is connected. But one of the things that 43 North said, and they had some engineers that looked at it, they said, yes, it could be separated. And, it would probably cost some money to do that, but it is something that could be done.
Other questions, other comments? Jason?
Just to add detail on what Jim said, 43 North, if we followed that route, they would, their team would be decoupling all of the utilities, et cetera, but at a large cost and a lot covered by grant funding. So they would be, if the building was turned into workforce housing, they would access grant funding to do part of that work, such as install separate, heating systems at every single unit. So I think they would bear the cost. The project would bear the cost in that sense. I don't think we went into the detail at how much it would cost the church to do that work. I imagine in the matter of hundreds of thousands, if not more. I don't know.
Okay, I see our usual folks who perhaps have no, I got them, who either have questions or comments. If they're further information, that would be great. Okay.
I see this has the same baggage as whatever the negatives of what I just heard about 43 North. We're kicking out our neighbors that we claim that we're doing a favor for. I haven't seen where this has any advantage. That's where I would come. This clearly does not have any advantage over 43 North as far as I'm concerned, because that's just all negative. Once we gone, it's gone. At least 43 North, we make the same sacrifices, but at least we have the potential income coming into that building, and we maintain control of that. And use Pat's own words, that still can go back, as far as we know, in about 10 years, can go back to being part of the campus again, and we then could choose to do that. So this doesn't have any advantages that I see over the first proposal.
All righty. Does anybody want to respond to that?
I'd like to respond to that. So 43 North redevelops it and does property management for 10 years. And then it comes back to the church, and then we're making decisions again. But what you have not seen, that you need to see, is the construction cost. And it's not all grants, it's loans. We will owe money. We will be paying interest on loans. And don't tell me that the New York State loan is forgivable because it is not. It will come up in 30 years, and it's our kids who are going to have to decide, well, are we going to continue this as housing? We better hope New York State still wants to do that too. Otherwise, we have to pay off, and these loans aren't in the multi-millions of dollars. Okay, it's not just a couple $100,000. It's real. It's 7 million when you add it all up to
Thank you.
do this construction, this repurposing.
Okay. Jim, do you want to respond to any of
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, I don't want to challenge or debate Pat on this, but that's the value of having an LLC that's in the middle. That basically we give the building to, the LLC takes it, and then they would be responsible. How they would manage that would be up to the LLC. One of the things that would be important is that, yes, at a period of time, the building would go back either to the LLC, or if Doopsy chooses to keep it, it would go back to us. But then for the next 20 years, it needs to remain in the status of workforce housing. So there's some fine tuning in that, and that's why it's important to think about, okay, there could be an LLC, some intermediary that would separate downtown church from the workforce housing project.
Thank you, Jim. Jason?
And just to state another elephant in the room, there's obviously a variety of opinions on all these options amongst the session members, as well as amongst you all there and elsewhere in the congregation. Something that was really helpful to me, I wasn't here on the 7th, but all of the responses were collated. I think they're all on the table and kind of laid out. So to give this session the idea of what everyone thinks, but there are obviously a variety of different thoughts on every option, pros and cons, and I think that's coming out already.
We have 3 minutes on this particular. Oh, okay. David, did you have something?
I've heard a lot of comments about the growth of this area, the new people moving in and everything else. But I've heard nothing about a coordinated project to go after them and even let them know we exist. I haven't seen any flyers going out or any discussion of that or any recruiting. And I would think that would be, if we're talking about new people coming into the area, new people moving in the area, we ought to be really aggressive in trying to encourage them, if they're Protestant, to think about us.
Which momentarily brings Ed's point out of the parking lot, right? And this is the balance that you're in at this time, is where are we going as a church? What are we going to do with our buildings, right? And those two things are going alongside each other. And so in an attempt to try to get to a place to see where we can get as an entire, where you can get as an entire community, we need to have these conversations to lift this up, to understand the complexity of it, but also to continue to move forward to get you to resolution. So,
PK's making a great point about moving forward, and I want to call your attention to that poster over there that has the trends and how in 10 years, 10 years ago, we had a third, pledge income, facility income, and endowment. And that was sustainable, okay? That's a draw on the endowment that doesn't go beyond sustainability. But in 10 years, we have flipped such that our pledge income is down and our facility income is up, but our draw on the endowment is also up because our expenses have gone up. So I'm all in favor of growing the church, and I think that would bring in pledge income. That would be an awesome thing, right? And then we wouldn't be dependent on facility income as much, and we certainly wouldn't be unsustainably drawing on the endowment. But that's a big project to grow the congregation.
Thank you. Ed, we're going to move on to the next opportunity. Is there do you have a footnote?
Yes, a footnote, a comment. One is that the housing nonprofits has been a mission. And so we need to make a decision. Is that an important mission or is something replacing it? And the other is a little bit into the weeds with Jim. Jim, does the LLC carry the responsibility of the loan, or are we, because they have no track record, so does another Deep Pockets have to guarantee the loan?
Honestly, Ed, I do not know. And I would think that it would be the responsibility of the LLC to do it. But, you're right. What's what are their pockets like? So, yeah, I can't answer that. But that is a really good question.
That's a question for
Yep.
Sally to.
Well, 43 North didn't answer that question either when they spoke to session, because we asked them, and because they said in their initial proposal that it was our endowment that was going to guarantee the loans, and beyond that, there would be personal guarantees. Okay, so in their second meeting with us, we asked them about that, and they said, well, we're not as sure about that. We'll have to get back to you. But as far as we know at this point, yes, guaranteeing $7 million, okay, a little bit in grants, but 3 and 3 is loans. Okay,
So-
those have to have a guarantee.
So again, you can hear the open questions, the things that need to be understood. Yes? That's so that was option number 2. No. In the interest of going to the next piece, because we do want to honor all of your time, when we get to the end, if we still have time, we'll go back to some things. So make a note, okay? But I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to comment on and understand what, at least at this time, is being put out there. And who knows, between the Holy Spirit and the Brain Trust in this room, there may be a fifth or an amalgam or something. So take us to the third.
So the third option, the Apple option, is to sell the church complex, all 4 buildings, to Spiritus Christi. They have recently proffered an offer of $2.5 million for the building. And in the past, back when Reverend Tiberia was still here, they did talk to us at that point, because there was a more serious conversation from them about buying the building, about what they might do with us, as far as allowing us to worship in the sanctuary, to have be in the building rent-free for 5 years. These lists are some possibilities of ways the building might be used, that I think Reverend Myra has talked about at different times. And so this would be the Apple option.
Thoughts, questions?
I know we've been presented with this information, but I've forgotten. Do we know about how much this building is worth?
That would be an appraisal. Actually, the windows are, Tiffany windows are probably, Jim, I think 2 something million. All of the Tiffany windows together are maybe between 1.5 and 2 million, just the windows themselves. But that would be one of the things that we would absolutely want to do, and something that maybe we should do before we even make any decision is have the building appraised by whatever organization.
Ed and then Jim.
Well, one caution on the appraisal, I would do that very discreetly. On the appraisal, I would do that very discreetly. I think that 2.5 million is a very good offer, but we'll find out. The second part of it is that I think we could continue to worship here, and that could go on for quite some time. And at the same time, if we can figure out what else we want to do as a mission, we could rent space wherever we needed it, and we would have a very adequate endowment to carry on a function. That's just a comment.
Thank you, Jim, and then Jason.
Yeah. The responding to Sally's question is someone from Catone Auctions down in more central New York that does a lot of sales of Tiffany came in, and they said depending on the auction, they could go for between $4 and $8 million in total. The angel window in particular in the back would be considered the most valuable. The other windows that would be very wanted, desirable at an auction would be the non-religious theme windows, like the harbor and the stream and landscapes. Those would be the most valuable at auction.
Jason is next.
I mean, there's so many different ways to think about the appraisal. Might be what, is it appraisal will give us a lot of information, but I think to Ed's point is a building can be appraised at 10 million or 15 or 20 million, and the windows are 4 to 8 million. And then the broader question, which the Leap of Faith team has started to address, is even if it's worth supposedly that much, appraised at that much, will someone pay for it? Will someone buy it? Is there an organization that has a use for it? If they were to buy it, what would they do with it? So there's a whole lot of questions that go into just the appraisal. And I think we all know that, if you own property, there's so many different costs, the replacement value, the taxable value, all of the different things. So it's.
I'm going to let Mary go next, and then Sam, and then over to.
I'm sort of shifting the topic.
Gail.
I'll do it, but you can shift back if
Okay.
people want to. At first, the idea of being a renter in the church that's been part of my life all these years was kind of difficult to get used to. But, I just kept thinking about it and thinking, well, what difference does that make? And how would my experience be different? And I'm getting used to that thought. And I wonder how, there may be, you want to make more comments on this discussion we've been having, but I hope that part of this time will also be people responding to the questions of how would it feel to us to be renters.
Thank you. Sam, and then Gail.
I really don't think this option has any credibility. I don't think, and I'm saying this confidentially here, I wouldn't want it spread widely to Spiritist people because that wouldn't be fair to them. But I don't think they've been fair with us, really throwing out possible ways that they could buy the church. Personally, I don't think there's a chance they could ever pay $2.5 million. Honestly, I just don't think they have the resources for that. If they wanted to go into some huge fundraising, trying to find some fat cats to help them and phase it in over time, I mean, that may be different, but the reversal role between them being the owner and we be the renter, we know that from experience, and again, I don't want to blurt out, but I think they have a poor record of taking care of what they've been responsible for, and irresponsible in terms of allowing people in the building, and there have been incidences of theft and so on, and unknown people in the building. I mean, that really rests on their shoulders. So I don't think they have much credibility, and I don't really think it's a feasible alternative to us.
Okay, and now we go over to Gail.
Has Spiritus Christi given any, or maybe haven't even asked, I wonder if Spiritus Christi is willing to, first of all, have us use the sanctuary all the time and not go into the Taylor Chapel. And secondly, for Lee's programs, are they offering certain opportunities like that?
Sally, would you like to respond?
These are all TBD. When we, when they made the offer, we sent something back about, would you allow this? Would you allow that? Would you be willing to do this? Can we keep our same worship time? And several other points. And the only information we got back from them was, we would give you 2.5 million for the building. And they didn't address, for whatever reason, they didn't address the other points about what we would be able to do. Now, we would be the sellers. If we decided to sell, we would be the sellers, and we would have, you know, we would have the strength to be able to say, these are the things we want, or it's not a deal. But we would also have to decide what are things we're willing to give up, and what are drop dead things that we say, no, we're not going to sell to you for that. Some folks have said that if you've been in a building forever and you've owned it forever, that once you become renters, you usually leave within a couple of years, because it's hard to be renters. It means you don't get the say of what happens with the building, how it's cleaned, how it's maintained, what happens with the windows. We maybe would want to put several caveats on an agreement. And so that would be a whole negotiation. None of those questions have really been answered at all. So
Thank you. Nancy?
Well, there is one paragraph that we would have it for 5 years. So that is from the letter of
that's
intent.
the first Perry across the net. That's like,
Yeah.
you can have this, and this is the way you do it, okay?
right, we have
Nancy?
sent out the clerks have sent out invitations to both the Quakers and Spiritus to ask for separate.
We haven't done it yet.
Okay, to ask for separate but really in-depth meetings with them for the session to meet with those two bodies.
I would like to hear from some voices we haven't heard from for a little bit. Rania?
This is more of a comment and a question, but when it comes to the details of this, it seems to me that even a meeting is not adequate. I think even to start with, I would have their lawyer and our lawyer participate in that first meeting, because it's a negotiation, the details of what we're asking for. And it seems to me that they may be more willing to negotiate. I don't know, just a suggestion.
Thank you. Carol?
The 5-year rent-free, it just occurs to me that always that coming to church, if we did that, coming to church each week, I would be 1 week closer every week to our doors closing. And it just breaks my heart. And the other thing I want to say is about the stained glass windows. First Presbyterian Church in Topeka, Kansas, put one of their medallion. They have more Tiffany windows than we do, and they have some medallion Tiffany windows, which are the most expensive. They put it up for auction at Sotheby's. This is recent, okay, in the last year and a half, and they had a reserve bid on it. Nobody ever reached the reserve bid. The window went back to the church. Now they have to figure out what to do with it.
So you wouldn't accept the first offer that Spiritus has given, right? Very good. Jason?
I think to Grania's point, I mean, a great point that if, the session and congregation decide to move forward pursuing the possibility of a sale to Spiritus, absolutely bring a lawyer. I will say we've had multiple meetings with 43 North. They presented 2 or 3 or 4 times. Never was a lawyer present. It was just an exploration, a conversation. So I think the intent, I believe, is for session to just have a conversation about the possibility. What are they imagining doing with the building if that were to happen? So I do not believe that the thought is to have a lawyer present at an exploratory meeting. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Likewise, we did not have a lawyer present with 43 North, who's a group that I would imagine it's as important, if not more, to have lawyers present with, but definitely need to happen. And I think, Carol, your point is the flip side of what Mary said a few minutes ago, is what would it mean for us, for everyone in this room, to be a congregation that is renting space and renting a space that we have owned for 200, however many, 150 years. So it's a huge consideration. I think part of the meeting that we're hoping to have with the Quakers is to get some information from them. They recently sold their building and became renters. How did they decide to do that? Why? What has their experience been like? To explore the possibility of what would it be like to be tenants. I have been a tenant and a homeowner in my life. I'm sure the same is true for many of you out there. They each come with their drawbacks and their benefits. So I think it's hard to think about the possibility of not continuing to own this building or own a space. And maybe that's not the decision that the congregation comes to, but it's worth definitely thinking through and praying through and talking through.
From Presbytery was present when Joel was presenting, and he is a lawyer. We specifically asked him.
Yeah, so there was a lawyer, Carol saying Ed Daniels from Presbytery was present as a lawyer. However, he wasn't present as our lawyer in that instance, but there was a lawyer
he was there
present.
as a trustee to listen in. Don?
We did get feedback. The Leap of Faith did get feedback because I was one of the ones that asked the question, what would you do with the Institute building if you got it? And that was a very explicit question. And I don't know if it's on Sally's list there, but one of those things was we would take the Institute building and turn it, basically my interpretation was get rid of all the current tenants and turn it into a mental, Pat, I'm just telling you what I've read, please.
We're not going to interrupt each other. Okay.
And the answer was that we're going to turn it into a facility, expand our mental health facility. That was what how I read it.
Thank you.
Well, and I think
Jason?
I just skimmed the list just an hour ago. It sounds like there's a whole bunch of possibilities, and I think they have a lot of thoughts in what they would do. So that, I think, was one, as were others. Hand it over.
I'm sorry I interrupted you, but so what I learned when I toured the building with Eileen and Joseph is that there is a small mental health clinic in the Allen Street currently, and they would move that over to the Institute building, which makes a whole lot of sense. Okay. But that would be like a few rooms. They're not the whole thing. There's, two floors. That can't be, it's not all going to be that, because on their list, they say, we want to keep Hochstein. They want to keep Hochstein because they want to have a music education for their kids. So that's why they have such a comprehensive list of uses that they would have for the Institute building.
Thank you. And Marie?
I just have one simple comment. If we cannot grow our membership in this church, then what's the difference? What happens to the building? And it doesn't seem like anybody's thinking about our membership.
Okay. Number 6.
So you need to have the microphone. But this, you hear the tension between the two conversations, right? One is we got to decide what's happening to this congregation. The other is we got to decide what's happening to the campus, and they are interwoven, but somebody said chicken egg, and I think that there's a lot of that going on. Yes.
So, one of the things of these 6 that I think all session members agreed to, and number 6 is decide actively what to do with our complex. So, and this is exactly why we're having the 7th and this.
What's the subtitle under that? Because I think
rather than have the decision made by attrition. So you can come up and read it yourself. But we all decided that we wanted to actively decide what happens with the buildings and not just have it be decided for us.
Okay, we're going to need it. Mary, you're my timekeeper. Do we need to move on to the next? Or do you want to add a comment? I would appreciate Mary to add a comment.
Again, I want to say something that's not following this. And I think we can take about 5 minutes more because the last one is basically this option, but taking Spiritus Christi out of it and opening it up to the market as a whole. And it'll be a shorter conversation.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say was one of the things I like about this option, and I just want to get that out there while we're talking about the questions as well, is I like the idea that this building would still be a church. And that, that means a lot to me. So as I think pluses and minuses, that's a really strong plus for me in terms of this option. I care about the building. I care about its history. I want to honor its legacy, and the idea of it going to a very progressive church that sees itself as part of downtown Rochester. I like that.
And Mary, when you're talking about this building remaining a church, are you talking about the entire plant or just the Institute building, which is what?
It could be either. It could be either. But in this case, we are talking about the option of selling to. I was respecting to the question of selling the whole complex to Spiritus.
Okay,
And I said
I know
before, what I liked about the first one, again, about our remaining a church, but in a smaller building that costs less and is more manageable. That was the heart of the reason for Leap of Faith, looking at possibilities for the Institute building so that might happen. So I don't want us to lose track of those positives at the same time that we're talking about raising questions and maybe some negatives.
Okay, I know that Jason wanted to say something. I know Ed would like to say something.
Just very quickly, number one on our list is that we want to remain a congregation. We want to be together, and it might be another place. It doesn't have to be here.
Trying to be brief, but multiple people have mentioned, what are we doing besides talking about the buildings? How are we moving forward as a congregation? Can we attract more members to the congregation, people coming to us, whether we're here or elsewhere, owners or tenants? Then one thing that has been running through my mind is right now our worshiping, attendance might be 30 or 40. We could grow that to 60 or 80 or 100 or 200 and still be much smaller than what the building space requires, right? So as I think about, I think none of these options is mutually exclusive with the idea of, it doesn't mean that we can't also grow and continue. So I've been trying to think about what might we look like as a church in 5 or 10 years, whether we're here or elsewhere, owners or tenants, but one can have difficult conversations about the building and also be working on that. To some people's comments, session has not taken, over the last months, we have not had the time or energy to tackle the, how do we do the, again, to Ed's point, perhaps the chicken first, I don't know. Do we do that first before we decide the building? That has not been the heart of discussions in the last few months. So much has been taken up by the building question. That's not to say that we won't and shouldn't all along. It's just a matter of time and energy.
Okay, Ed?
Yes, and I hope we don't make that decision until we've dealt with the other side of it. To Mary's original comment, I think we both joined the church about the same time. And it is a hard decision to think of leaving. But I'll tell you what has made it a lot easier for me to think about is if we can get excited about our next chapter, whatever that looks like, the kind of thing it will be a lot easier for me. And if it also allows us to worship in the sanctuary, that also would add to it. But I don't think we're limited. I think we've got some incredible assets, both in people and in financial assets. And so the world is open. And I think we ought to ask ourselves, what is the important thing that we can be doing? And that may require some imagination and some real creativity, but there are needs out there. And I've been pointing my own thinking towards some of that. So if we can continue that conversation, I could get a lot more excited about dealing with the building issue.
Thank you, Ed, which brings us to, drum roll, please, somebody. Drum roll. Thank you. Option Blueberry.
So option Blueberry would be selling the church complex on the open market. And Pat put this poster together of several churches that either have sold or in the process of selling. Some of them sold and they were repurposed for other things. Some of them sold to other congregations. Some of them are in the process or on the market, like the Irondequoit Presbyterian Church, which was just listed in April. So this is option Blueberry.
Questions, comments?
We looked at this. One of the options was Ken Glazer of Buckingham Properties. And we were, we wanted, it was the Institute building that we were asking about. And he came with his associates, toured. He came about 3 times, I think. And it came right down to it that he wanted the whole complex. And we stopped right there because that was not our mission.
Okay, so that's some background information for you. So there was interest at that moment. I see Ed and then I see Dave.
This strikes me as an interesting one to pursue. And largely because one of the needs that's out there, and nobody's really developed it, is, and this building has been used by many of those organizations. Even our own Lee has brought in his choral group to use the sanctuary. I think there are artistic groups, Monroe Players, etc., that could look for a permanent home. And so what would be involved is finding some sort of consortium which they could participate in, and this could become an arts center. That's a pretty broad description, but it needs more development, obviously.
So you see how when you start to have conversations, some interesting ideas float up. Questions, comments? Dave's not here. Here you go, Dave.
Just a reminder for those who weren't here when we sold Central Church to Hochstein and First Church to forgot the group. What?
Central Church.
Florence Church, yes, but I can't remember the name of the church.
Central Church of Christ.
Central Church of Christ. Thank you. We had a constraint in those days, which said it had to go to a religious organization. We could not find a buyer for either building. We sold each building to the respective new owners for, I believe it was $1. And in fact, with the Central Church, we gave them $100,000 to fix the roof. And so even in those days, it was hard to sell these buildings.
So I did all the research there, so I'd like to speak to this a little bit.
Please.
South Presbyterian was Deb Swift's church, and they were able to sell to another congregation. So I've got a little detail up there. Deb wrote a book about it. And Deb's organization, Firebird Spirit, they would be willing to come and talk to us about, how that could happen. It really is a matter of timing. There was a Christian Science temple on East Ave. It was the Lyric Theater. Grace Road Evangelical Church took it over. Okay, so they're now off the market, and there aren't a ton of those mega churches out there. But it was a Church of God that took over John Knox Presbyterian in Greece. Now, by that point, John Knox was down to 80 members, 40 members voted at an annual meeting to approve it. And what they did was that they moved down a mile down the road to Greece Baptist, which is a progressive church, and they actually merged with them. Okay. The other one, Laurelton. Remember, we had a visitor from Laurelton, Susan Orr. That was her church, and they had to sell. They were just down to not large numbers, and they sold, and now it's the Well. It's a non-denominational church. Calvary St. Andrews is in limbo. They sold to a developer, and the developer can't get permission from the preservation board to move forward with turning it into a hotel. The neighbors are objecting, okay? So there are many things that can happen once you go onto the market, right? But it also gives you some sense of what Ed was speaking to. What interest is there out there, right? If there's zero interest and Spiritist is still saying they're interested, that's meaningful.
Thank you. Others, Sally?
There's also been some talk with us from the Quakers who have said that, just to put this out there, that they are interested in staying with us wherever we go. They would stay with us if we stayed in this building. 43 North said that there's a good possibility they wouldn't develop Halleck Lounge. It would stay a lounge. Quakers could continue to worship there, possibly. The Quakers also said they have some money. They would be willing to go in with us to do whatever we thought about doing. They would also be willing to go with us if we decided to go and, as Pat was saying, buy another building that was maybe more right size for our congregation. And the Quakers said, we'd very possibly move with you.
Thank you for that information. Did I see some hands up? I saw Grania and then Don.
I just want to make one, I guess I would say, positive comment about the idea of selling to Spiritus. And I've heard you all, and I have some experience myself, so I understand what some of the difficulties would be. But to me, the positive thing, as opposed to any of these other options, is it gives us, as a church, it gives us 5 years to develop our membership, to develop our ministries further. When Jonathan was here, we were starting new things, and then some of them kind of went by the wayside. And I just feel like, from my experience in historic preservation, that transformation or that conversion, reuse of the building is going to take everybody at downtowns, and especially the leadership, is going to take a lot of energy and effort and thought on the part of our leaders. And to me, that's a distraction. And I know that's a lot of people don't agree with me, but I just felt like I had to say, to me, it gives us the most options to sell to Spiritus.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Don, was it you who had your hand up?
I'm going to turn the thing back to Ed, because all of these options to me is back to where Ed is. Everything that we have done historically, our justice stuff, how did we do LGBT thing? We had a congregation of a large enough resources to pull it off. If we don't have people, we're not going no place. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to banter. I don't care if I move to a smaller church, because if I'm going to die, meaning I keep shrinking, all I did was make a leap. And I just lost my home. And if I'm going to leap, why don't I just go out of business and I go find another home someplace else? There's no reason for me to go to a smaller group unless I have a plan on how to at least stop us shrinking, because we can't do any of this stuff without human resources, because our endowment, all that comes from us contributing to that. And without us here, there's nobody to do any of that. And it really bugs me that we would jump to selling a building before we have an idea where our home is going to be. Anyway.
Okie doke. I saw Jason and then on Carol. Is that the right order?
So
I'll make it arbitrary. Thank you, Carol.
by the way, so everyone knows this meeting is being transcribed. And so I think the computer is going to take notes and we will all digest this. The point that I've heard 100 times today is, what are we going to be doing? Where are we going to go? Are we going to stay here? How are we going to grow? What will our missions be? So my takeaway from this message, and everyone might have their own up here, is what are we doing outside of the building question? If I can bring it back to the Blueberry option, the sell on the open market, in addition to what Dave was talking about, historically, selling the past churches for $1. So one question is, would we get offers? The second question is, who would those offers come from? And if they're coming from another congregation, that might keep it a church. But what if it's a congregation that is not open and welcoming? This is something I've been thinking of. A lot of the churches that have been purchased have been by more, I call them happy clappy, less likely to be progressive, less traditional, but often not as liberal leaning as Stoopsy is. So would we be okay? Minister Florence, I wasn't here, that was 50 years ago, but I don't think that denomination is particularly open and welcoming of LGBTQ. Would we have made that decision now? Certainly from a racial justice perspective was a great decision. Are they open to LGBTQ folks? Would we be okay selling our church to an institution that doesn't share our values? I don't know. So just things that I have been rolling around.
Thank you. And okay, so we're into the wrap up. Okay, thank you.
I heard Raphael Warnock on TV the other day. He wrote a book, and he is the first Black U.S. Senator from Georgia. He's a preacher at Ebenezer Baptist Church, Martin Luther King's church. And this stuck with me. Those who sign on to build a cathedral know they will not be around to finish it. And Susan Rashane said when she left our board, a leap of faith is a risk. There are no guarantees, only missed opportunities. And from one of PK's sermons a few weeks ago, I wrote this down on my bulletin. Blow on the embers of your faith.
All righty. We got a preacher going. Let's see if the other preacher has something to say.
I just want to thank this session for having different opinions and sharing them with us.
Thank you. Now, there are some folks who have not had a chance to speak, and we're right up at the end. So I'm just going to give a pause for anybody. I know John hasn't spoken. There's a few people. I won't point anybody else out, but John's on session, so he just got the hot seat there. So I'm going to stand, and you can just shake your head at me if you don't want to say anything. Okay? Eye contact. Yes, no?
I have one question. It takes us way back to the beginning, and that was the 43 North. If that decision was made, what does that mean for people who are still in this church 20 to 30 years from now? What are they being given, left with, saddled with in terms of decisions that are made now?
Thank you. Mary, do you want to respond to that?
That just takes us back to what I was saying before, that one of the advantages of that option is that we would be in a smaller church that would, so 43 North would be here and we would be in the rest of the building. In that option, we would have a smaller church. We would have our sanctuary as we have it now. It would cost us less money, and hopefully we would be able to put more of our energies towards mission and less towards the building. Am I answering your question? No.
Not quite.
Yeah, that is the question, because there's a 30-year loan with New York State, and it will come around in 30 years, and maybe New York State will renew it, but you're paying interest on it. You have that obligation.
Let's have one conversation, please. Thank you. You can finish your statement. There was just a number of conversations.
And 43 North in their proposal says they want to property manage for 10 years and then they want to give it back to us. So then we would have to hire another property manager, okay? And that kind of makes us landlords to people who are, living in apartments. So if they can't make their $1,000 for a studio apartment rent, then we're in the position of saying, gee, I'm sorry, you can't live here.
So there are certainly a lot of questions, aren't there, with that particular choice? It's intriguing, and yet there's a lot to be discerned about it. You do have a history of providing housing. You did so for the canal workers, I believe, and also as dormitory for the original RIT before they were RIT. So there is some history in offering housing. I believe that was part of what sort of tapped into the leap of faith too. That's why this building was built as housing. Interesting. Mercy, anything?
Jim, you mentioned that we would be on the board of a potential property management company or the LLC. Yeah. Would we have over 50% representation on that board in terms of decision making, or?
That would be something that would need to be discussed. One of the things that in thinking about what an LLC would be, maybe it includes people from the broader community, maybe from the presbytery, but those things would all have to be worked out as the LLC would be established. So I can't give you an answer for that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my concern is just that, obviously, we've all heard the story about the money changers. We have to be very careful in being sort of profit-minded if we're a church. Obviously, this is a financial conversation, so it's going to come up. But some assurance that whatever is done in the housing scenario would not be in pursuit of increasing profits year over year, rather than actually providing people with housing that can help them grow and develop and be secure.
Sure. Good point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I see Lee. Lee, do you have something you want to add? Once you can get off of mute, right?
He's driving.
Yeah, please.
There we go. I'm on my way to Buffalo to sing a Brahms Requiem that starts in a little bit. But it's been wonderful to listen today, and I did have one clarifying question about the first option. We would, if the third and fourth floors were turned into housing, would we still be retaining use of the first and second floors and the basement of the Institute?
They might
Sally?
be, they would be, that 43 North has talked about developing those for possibly some retail things, possibly leaving some of them alone. There is some requirement with because we are a historical building, they could not change the celebration hall. So we could still use the celebration hall because that will not be turned into housing. That would probably be a space that would be left alone. My understanding sort of is that the Shaw Room and the Halleck Lounge may still be the same and be retained as such, and that again they could be rented out and could be rented out by us for use. The basement, they might redo the bowling alley and have some communal space down there they talked about. So again, they're still not absolutely positive what they would do with everything. That's a conversation to have. But yes, there would be still some spaces that they would probably not be changing much and that we could then rent as a congregation.
Thank you. Yeah, Lee, can you go on mute, please? We hear your car. But thank you for the question. I appreciate it. John, any comments here?
We've talked a lot about financial resources, but there's human resources involved also. And for me, the amount of energy and time that this community is spending on this complex is unsustainable. We have a building and property committee, we have a personnel committee, we have a space use committee. Those are all energies that are not being used. Members of this community are not using those energies for doing mission, for doing development. Our energy is so consumed by this building that I dream of a day when our energies can go into program, can go into mission, into justice. That's how I want to spend my time. I don't want to spend my time going to personnel meetings and I mean and that energy consumption is not sustainable. We've been shrinking our session year after year because we can't recruit the leadership that it takes to run this place. We've got to be cognizant of our leadership resources as well.
So we're going to need to put a hold on this, okay? And I appreciate everybody's feedback. I want to just, for the purposes of clarity for everybody here, I've been working as a facilitator today. What's my job, right? My job is to walk alongside you to help you get to your solution. I will not be suggesting a solution. I will not be championing a solution. I am walking with you to get you there. That's my directive. That's one of the reasons that I have been asked to be here. So if it ever sounds like I am championing one idea over another, it's simply that I'm making sure that it's understood. It's not because I'm saying, oh, this one's good, and let me tell you why. I'm going to maintain the facilitator role. Obviously, we need to still keep talking, right? I mean, this is only the beginning. I hope you appreciate the energy that your session is putting in. They are eager to make sure that you are in the know. I think they needed, to Grania's first question, I think they needed to get themselves educated before they could start to know how to share. And that's not everybody's way, but it's what they wanted to do. They wanted to be able to come to you and just not go, I don't know, let's get another flip chart, right? So anybody who wants a copy of the proposal? Very good. So we will have more of these. These will be ongoing. Hope you like lunch. Hope you like to eat. And thank you for all the hospitality that is here. We will have more of these until we really can come into a line where everybody has good information and a good decision is made. Until then, God be with you till we meet again.